All right, welcome back once again, everybody. I'm Don Seifert. It's the Dr. Tree Fruit and Don podcast. I'm here with Dr. Kari Peter. Say hi, Kari.
Hello, folks.
Dr. Greg Krawcheck. Say hi, Greg.
Hello, everyone.
And Dr. Shan Kumar. Say hi, Shan.
Hello, everyone.
It is July 10th, 2025. And Shan, let's start off with you.
Yes, thanks, Don. Hi, everyone. I just want to continue from where we left off the last time we spoke, which was about the timing of when to do your soil and leaf testing for nutrient analysis. And so last time we talked, said that that was close to the end of June. We said that that will be a good time to sample leaves for Honeycrisp because of how Honeycrisp has that zonal leaf chlorosis that starts, that's genetic and starts sometime towards mid-June for Premier Honeycrisp to somewhere in the, starting of July for regular Honeycrisp. And so ideally, it would be nice to sample before you see the zonal leaf fluorosis. However, then people usually come with the question of, okay, I'm already seeing zonal leaf fluorosis. Should I do the leaf sampling or should I just wait for next year? So that's the thing. You can still take the leaves and still do the analysis. It's always better than not doing the analysis, even if you see the zonal leaf fluorosis in Honeycrisp. So, for example, you haven't taken a leaf sample yet for Honeycrisp or Premier Honeycrisp or another variety where you're slowly seeing that leaf zonal fluorosis. It's fine. You can still take that sample now, and you will still get a very good idea of what nutrient composition in the leaves that you have. Versus not having any information at all. So I would still recommend taking that leaf sample. So for people who are not used to taking leaf samples and have done soil analysis a lot, the reason why I would highly recommend taking leaf samples, especially for varieties that are very finicky, or especially your fresh market varieties like Honeycrisp, Evercrisp, and Fuji, Gala, and things like that. But for all varieties in general, the reason why we recommend doing a leaf test, if not every year, at least every other year, is because it gives you a really accurate profile of the nutrient contents of that particular variety that the soil test might not give you. For example, I've seen many soil tests from the Adams County area where usually the soil test might say that you need to apply potassium, for example, right? And you can replenish potassium every year with 60 pounds to 100 pounds, say, for example. However, when you do the leaf test, sometimes you see that the leaf has the regular amount of potassium that you would need. And so then in that case, there is not a need to apply potassium because there is enough potassium in the soil that sometimes is not being captured by the soil test or potassium available in other sources that are slowly being taken in by the plant. And so because of that, the tree is having enough potassium already in the first case. So that is how ways in which you can save money. And of course, with calcium, with something like calcium, the soil does not give you an accurate response as to how the tree is doing with calcium, because sometimes you can have very, very high levels of calcium in the soil, but still have a calcium deficiency in the leaves, and you will not know that until you do a leaf test. So especially for problematic varieties, but also for all varieties, I think it's a very good idea to do a leaf test to get a very accurate picture of your nutrient status, because you can only work with what you know. And so the way to do that is very easy. In fact, it's much more quicker to take samples for a leaf analysis. So you select about 10 trees or between 5 to 10 trees in a particular block that you're working with, not all of them at the same place. And then you try to select 10 leaves from each tree maximum, or 5 leaves from each tree if you're doing 10 trees, or 10 leaves from each tree if you're doing 5 trees. But total, you want 50 leaves for that sample. And the way you take those leaves, you're taking it from the new growth, but from the midsection of the new growth. That's all you need. So take one or two leaves from each branch. So take about 10 leaves from a tree, and about five trees take 50 leaves. Or you can take five leaves from each tree and take up to samples from 10 trees. So both of them will give you 50 leaves. And so that's how you want to target the midsection of the new year's growth. So this year's growth, you want to target the midsection. And that's how you take a leaf sample. Very easy. And you can send it to the Ag Analytical Laboratory at Penn State, or your local laboratory that is able to do a leaf test. I know there are many laboratories around the state that help with that as well. Now, coming back to a soil sample, that is also sometimes useful, especially when you are starting to plant, especially when you're thinking of planting a new block. It's very important to do a soil test. And similarly, you want to take the soil cores from, if it's an established block, you want to take it from within the drip line, about 8 inches in depth, and take about 15 to 20 cores, mix it up, and then take a composite sample, take a representative sample from that composite sample to send it to your laboratory. So that is for sampling, soil sampling as well. And then if you have any questions about interpreting your soil analysis, or something looks very curious as far as a comparison of the soil and leaf test, please feel free to let me know, or Don or extension educators know as well. And or feel free to reach out to me directly to talk a little bit more about what you might need to do for improving tree health. So that's as far as uh, soil and leaf sampling is concerned. I also wanted to mention that I know that depending on labor availability, that we are slowly entering summer pruning season as well. There are many orchards that are currently summer pruning their blocks, and so that has started as well. And I know some folks have summer pruned earlier itself for some varieties like Honeycrisp, but regular summer pruning season is usually now in August, when you have time before harvest. And so there are varieties like Kayla, Fuji, Honeycrisp that are being summer pruned right now. So that is also happening as we speak. And then I think that as far as the peach season is concerned, we have already finished harvesting the early season peaches. Rich May, Desiree, and all of that seem to have good size and a decent size. And I was surprised that I mean, we were expecting split pits and all of that because of the amount of rain we've gotten, but it was not as bad as we had thought with all the rain. So it was actually a decent crop for some of the early peaches we have. The regular season peaches are currently being harvested, and it seems like, in general, that we have a good peach crop around the state. Unlike the cherries, which a lot of the cherries had split because of the amount of rain we got. And so we are very close to about a month away from starting to harvest apples. So yeah, that's about where I am. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Appreciate the refresher on soil and leaf analysis. So it's always good to give folks that reminder. Greg.
Thank you, Dan. Um, I think my update this time will be really short. Uh, Despite all the unusual weather, the rain, the heat, and so on, it seems like insect development is progressing normally. I mean, it seems like we are in a relatively normal season at the moment. Codling moth just started the second generation. The the potential challenge here would be that we have a very extended flight of the first generation. So I expect, as a consequence, also a very extended flight of the second generation. And then depends how the season goes, we might go into the third generation. I'm saying this a little bit reluctantly because we had last year was the first time we had the complete third generation of codling moth. I don't know how it's gonna be this year. It really will depend on the weather in late August, September. But when you're planning to manage codling moth, uh, please take this into account that probably another week or two, that's when the first application of insecticide should be applied. But it is quite possible that when you start, you might need to go until mid-September or late September controlling codling moth. Uh, Big thing here is, and again, it's kind of old tune, but traps. Please check your traps, monitor traps, because this is the really the only tool that can help you decide if you need to spray, when to stop spraying. Uh, I mean, we used to have very simple codling mob flight. It used to be the first generation, 4 weeks, it was over. We had 3 weeks breaks, and then we had second generation, and it's no longer the case anymore. We have continuous flight. We have overlapping of generations because we will have the flight of the second generation, and the second and third will kind of overlap with each other. So there's a lot of issues here. Put traps in the orchard, monitor, and then decide what needs to be done and how long it needs to be controlled. One thing that we keep stressing is please rotate the insecticides. If you went with diamides for the first generation, and diamides are Altacor, Exirel, Verdeprim, Voliam, Besiege, Mimecto, if you went with any one of those products for the first generation, do not use them for the second generation. Delegate is your good choice here. Or if you have low pressure, you can actually go with the granulosis virus. You have Madex, Sidex, or Virosoft, which are very effective, but you have to use them frequently. The granulosis virus products being neutralized by UV light. So you really have to spray every week if you try to base your codling moth program on granulosis virus. With the delegate, I think 10, 14 days between the application should work. Again, it might depend how much more rain we will be getting and how intensive the rain will be. But this is something that actually between the weather and what you see in your traps, looking at NUA right now, NUA might not be your best friend in deciding when to spray. Uh, because of this extended flight, NUA does not encompass the extended flight, the possibility of the flight that look like this. NUA still provides its predictions or forecast based on the model that was established when we had this normal codling moth population. That's no longer the case. So traps are your best friend in saving a lot of money or protecting a lot of money and then spraying more, but at least have clean fruit at harvest. With Oriental fruit moth, we are at the beginning of the third generation. This one is relatively easier because, if you had a lot of flagging on the peaches, you have it. If you did not have flagging on the peaches, well, then probably you did not have Oriental fruit moth problem. Monitoring is again a good option. You can monitor using the OFM L2 lures or OFM CD lures. Both of them will provide you a pretty good picture of what's going on in the orchard. So again, don't control something that you don't have, and the traps will tell you if you have it or you don't have it. Another thing that I want to mention right now is woolly apple aphid. This is not a great woolly year. However, some people, based on the experience or based on the observation, we can find right now woolly apple aphid very easily in the orchard if woolly apple aphid is present in your orchard. And this is very important. We don't have traps for woolly apple aphids, but they are easy to spot because this white webbing on the bottom of the leaves on the new growth, you can see it and then you know if you have a problem. It's kind of late for Movento to be used right now. However, because of the rain and the still growing, you can still use Movento to control woolly apple aphids. When there's no more growth and the woolies are heavy, you have option of applying diazinon. But please remember that you have only one application of diazinon available per season. So this is something that I would keep diazinon as a rescue treatment in case you really need it. Uh, but we can see woolies keep exploding on us until mid to late August. So don't use diazinon too early. I would keep it as a rescue, and Movento still should work for us. Um, Another thing that pretty soon might be time to control is San Jose scale. But again, traps are available. You put the traps out. When you start catching flying males, spray within 10 to 14 days. And the products we have, like Esteem, like Centaur, like Movento, they will take care of San Jose scale. Something that we normally talk about at this moment is Persilla, but again, it varies from orchard to orchard. They are effective products. Sometime, this is the time that if you don't have Persilla up to now, you probably will not have Persilla problem. If you have Persilla, then you really might go with the mixture. In our orchard, last week we actually applied a mixture of Bexar and Rymon just to make sure that we keep them under control, and it seems to provide a very effective control. Uh, European red mites, that's the last pest I want to mention. With the rain we have, the weather we have, you should not have a problem with European red mites right now, but monitoring, checking leaves might make sense. With that much moisture in the ground, probably control will not be necessary unless you really start seeing bronzing in a very short time period. So that's really update for the insects. I don't know if there's anything else, any questions from the panelist or from Dan. If
N-
not,
that
if not, then this will be the insect update.
no, that sounds pretty good to me. I was gonna say I was just at a gentleman's farm yesterday who was dealing with a little bit of Paracetamol. Um, so I don't know if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we can. I mean, we already mentioned Persilla, but the issue with Persilla right now is that if we didn't do this generation defining treatments with oil early on, what we're dealing with right now are all stages of the insect being present in the orchard. And this creates a problem because there's no insecticide that can kill all of them.
Hmm.
And That's why I mentioned that I use this mixture earlier on. But you can go again, it depends what is in the orchard. You go after the hard shell crawlers or soft shell, they are in the drop of water. You have adults, you have eggs. You have to decide what you're trying to control, but mixtures right now make sense if you see all stages present on your trees.
Yeah.
Again, the big thing right now is that we have a lot of new growth coming, the coverage becoming more difficult,
Hmm.
and Persilla loves to live and feed on the new growth, and then they will go to the older, and then you will start seeing honeydew coming to the fruit, and then you might get this sooty mold on the fruit and so on. So check what is in the orchard. I have seen orchard covered with surround, and
Hmm.
if people, I mean, surround is a very good option. However, applying surround still will probably end up with a lot of surround residue on the fruit during the harvest. So this is something that we try not to do. We use surround earlier on, but if someone wants to use it and not worry about the residue, then yeah, it is a very good option.
Yeah, he had some very vigorous new growth, which I think was
That's
some of his
that's
problem there.
exactly what is kind of speeding up cell development and making the problem more severe, the new growth. So they really love to feed on the fresh new leaves and shoots.
Yeah. So,
So, but again, you can you can use any neonicotinoids, you can use Delegate, you can use Exirel, you can use Rymon. Make sure about the PHIs, okay?
hmm,
That's the important part. But other than this, and maybe some mixtures are needed if you see everything. So that's really the best advice right now.
awesome. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Dr. Peter.
So this year has been a pretty challenging year, especially, well, it's pretty much the whole season as far as disease pressure. In April, we had good conditions for fire blight, but it was also dry, so powdery mildew really anchored in, and there's quite a bit of powdery mildew out there. And then the rain started about May 1st, May 2nd, and it's pretty much still raining. I was doing some looking at some of the weather stations across the state, and since May 1st till now, we're averaging around anywhere from the central to the east. It's about 15 inches roughly, plus or minus a few inches for some areas. York County has received a little bit more than us, a couple inches. And then west of here has received a little bit less than us, but we have had a decent amount of rain over like the last 2 months. And so, what does that mean disease wise? Well, first, bitter rot is very much showing up with a vengeance. I've started to see the first incidents of bitter rot in late June, which is pretty early, but we had some pretty good infection conditions, meaning wet periods with warm temperatures in late May and early June. So let's talk about bitter rot and also especially being mindful how much rain is falling in between your sprays. So first of all, Honeycrisp is one of the most vulnerable varieties. We're going to be harvesting it. Well, Premier is going to be probably in the next month to 6 weeks or so, roughly, and then our typical Honeycrisp will be thereafter. With Premier, our options are limited with the PHI. So Flynn Extra, Luna Sensation, those have a 14-day PHI. Maravon has a 0-day PHI. Also, don't forget about Captan. Captan is going to be your workhorse, but Captan is surface only. So you have to make sure that you have that consistent layer of protection. So, case in point, I've been trying to kind of walk the walk of the talk of my talk. So I've been very mindful of when I'm spraying my treatments on my research blocks. And for example, my Honeycrisp block, was for I have bitter rot treatments. It was sprayed on June 30th, which was last Monday. And watching the rain this week, I had about an inch and a half of rain that fell since that spray. So I decided yesterday to put on another application, even though it'd been like maybe it just been over a little over a week. But I knew more rain was coming because I was looking at the forecast. So this is a juggling that you have to do with mitigating bitter rot and especially preventing bitter rot that may have established out there already. So be mindful of how much rain is falling in between your sprays and what you have sprayed. And if you do see any bitter rot right now, drop the fruit immediately because those lesions will produce spores, and those spores will then be ripe for causing infection throughout your orchard. And Honeycrisp, Premier Honeycrisp, anything with a Honeycrisp parent is especially vulnerable. So please be mindful of that. Also be mindful of your later varieties as well that can be vulnerable to Honeycrisp. I'm sorry, to bitter rot. Omega is still an option. This is a 28-day PHI. Approvia is an option. That's about a 28, 30-day PHI. But be careful when you are wanting to use something like Maravon or Luna Sensation because that has a frac 7 and Approvia is a frac 7. So be mindful of how many frac 7s you've applied this season in your apple orchard. So it's a juggling act, but my take-home message for the bitter rot is be mindful of how much rain is falling in between your sprays, because that is really going to factor in how well your protection is going to be durable, because nothing lasts forever and the fruit are growing. So just please be mindful of that. As far as organic management goes, sulfur is still your best bet. I have also recommended other products like the bacterial-based products like Double Nickel and Serenade ASO or Serenade Opti. Also, these have shown a modicum of control in the orchard, but this might be an extreme pressure year. So in order for those products to give you any semblance of success, you are going to have to spray more often than a conventional grower will. So if you're seeing like about an inch of rain falling in a week, you are going to have to probably be spraying every 5 days to make sure you have a durable layer of protection on your fruit. So for the organic growers, please be mindful of that. And you're going to be having to unfortunately spray a lot because these products are surface only. Another apple disease that is raging with a vengeance in my research orchards is apple blotch or Marsanina blotch. And I first saw these symptoms in mid-June, which shocked me because that was the earliest I've ever seen this. But it didn't surprise me because the week of May 11th, and particularly May 13th to May 17th, this is when the Marsanina or apple blotch spores were starting to, first, they have matured and they were erupting from those overwintering locations, leaves, parts of the tree, etc. We had great conditions with regards to temperature because this is a very finicky disease or finicky fungus when it comes to temperature. So I'm seeing a lot of Marsanina out there in my orchards, my research orchards that aren't treated or being treated with something that is not robust against apple blotch. So if you see this disease, which is it's very noticeable, they're yellow leaves and they have dark islands in them. And so then that's Marsanina. And if you see this in your orchard, that's another reason to stay up on your sprays because this will defoliate your trees very quickly. So Captan, the products that you're using for bitter rot, they will all work against this. But the goal is a consistent layer of protection that your trees aren't naked at any time without a fungicide to keep this disease in check. As far as the stone fruit diseases right now, this also should be taking precedent within people's minds, especially with brown rot. We are very much into the peach season, so folks should be being pretty good about keeping on their sprays and rotating their fungicides by frac groups. I put out a disease update last week with regards to talking about brown rot and brown rot prevention, especially pre-harvest brown rot control. The rule of thumb that I recommend to people is following this like 18 to 21 days before harvest, then 9 to 11, or 11 to 9 days, and then 3 to 1 days. This is research based out of Rutgers that showed a very good regime. I personally, because of how wet this has been wet this year, I've begun my brown rot sprays earlier. So my Raritan rows are going to be harvested probably the end of July, and I actually started my brown rot sprays next week. And I put on another brown rot spray this week because an inch and a half of rain has fallen. So this is something, I mean, this we're in good brown rot weather, and we have been in good brown rot weather over like the last month or so. So this is not something to cheap out on with regards to management. So just be mindful. Like the same rules apply with bitter rot as they do with brown rot. Being mindful of how much rain is falling, what you're applying. If you've been applying Captain or sulfur up until this point, it's not really necessary to tank mix your single modes of action products with Captain at this point. You can just apply them as is. Flynn Extra as is. Lunaflex as is. Mirabis, Aprovia. You've got lots of options for managing bitter rot right now. For the organic folks, again, OSO, the Serenade products, double nickel, all of the sulfur, all of these will suppress brown rot. But again, the same rules applies is for bitter rot, is that you need to be very consistent with keeping that layer of protection on and spraying more often, especially during really wet conditions. And we have some forecasted wet conditions for the next, like for over the next week. So just be on alert about that. Bacterial spot of peach, we're still in that season, but you have to be mindful of the products that are using and their pre-harvest intervals, because some of the coppers and definitely oxytetracycline have a 28-day PHI. So you may want to switch to something else that has a 0-day PHI, something like your bacterial-based products, Serenade, double nickel, Quava, I believe, has a 0-day PHI, I think. I have to double check that one. I believe there is a copper that has a low PHI right now. But usually what I tell people, because it's the cultivars that are susceptible post-pit hardening, so you'll see the very shallow bacterial spot lesions. And this has been another good year. I saw bacterial spot cooking very well in the orchards at the end of May and beginning of June, so it's definitely out there. And then the last disease I just want to mention, because I've seen this over the last few weeks, and I got an email from someone, and I believe this is legit the disease that it's popping up right now. And many people probably aren't familiar with it because it's more of a West Coast disease, and that's shot hole or corneum blight. It's not like it's rare here. It does rear its head every once in a while, but I think this has been a really good year for it because I've noticed it in several orchards when I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but then I did some more digging and I was like, this isn't backspot. I believe this is a fungus. So shot hole disease, it's also known as corneum blight. It's a fungal disease. It overwinters in infected buds and twig cankers, and it likes higher temperatures. And the higher the temperature, the fewer wetness hours it needs to cause infections. So what do the symptoms look like? To see if this resonates with anyone on their stone fruit trees, because it can affect peaches, apricots, cherries. It is in your stone fruit. So on the leaves, you will see small reddish purplish brown spots, random. It does not look like phytotoxicity. These are legit brown spots, different shapes, but they're circular. As the spots age, it will progress and the center will fall out and give that shot hole appearance. And another description that I've read is that there's the size of BBs. So like the BBs you would use for a BB gun, that's the size of the holes or BB sized. And as far as the symptoms on the fruit, they begin as small purplish spots that develop into a gray-white lesions. And their surface. So it's different than the depressed pits of bacterial spot. And remember, bacterial spot causes angular lesions, follows the veins of the leaf for the leaf lesion. So it's very different than bacterial spot as far as this disease. And then you may see gummosis on fruit, on buds. And I know I've seen this recently because we had a meeting last week in Belleville, Pennsylvania, at an Amish orchard, and I saw this on one of their apricot trees, and I was looking at it, and I was like, "This isn't backspot. This is something else." And thinking back, I believe it was definitely shot hole. So if you see this, this is a fungal disease. So as far as prevention goes, well, the time for preventing it is gone, unfortunately. So, as far as salvaging anything, definitely keep up on your sprays because you're worrying about brown rot right now. But this is definitely something I probably will cover in the winter meeting since this has popped up. Just because I got an email from someone earlier this week sending me pictures and they thought it was phytotoxicity. I say, that's not phytotoxicity. That is definitely a disease. And I believe it's this corneum blight. And again, this doesn't seem to be a major disease for us out east. It's a very much a major disease for the West Coast in almonds and in their stone fruit in the western part of the country, Colorado, Utah, Oregon. So in that realm, so that is it can be very devastating and cause significant loss. So, but because of our crazy conditions this year, which may be more normal than crazy, but it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing this disease possibly taking a foothold. So it's something to be mindful of. It's kind of my job trying to be a soothsayer as far as predicting what might be coming down the pike. So, but I will definitely be talking more about this in the future. So, but that is the broad brushstrokes for the plant tree fruit or the tree fruit disease update. So, any questions, Don?
No, that sounds really good. I know it's been really hard with, as we've talked about, the weather and the constant rain, though things have eased up a little bit where we're not getting rain every other day. Now it's
Yeah.
just once a
Yeah.
week. Um, but
I
yeah,
do have one more thing to mention about fire blight that I just thought of it right now. Because New York is struggling with fire blight. So the fire blight has really popped up in Pennsylvania, and people are trying to kind of pinpoint, well, when did this happen? So I have a couple thoughts on that as far as shedding some light. So real quickly, one, we definitely had an extended bloom. So there was a lot of straggler blooms out there that I think didn't get protected when we had good fire blight conditions in the beginning of May. So there's that. There's one. The other one is that I think we had some major storm events that created trauma that we didn't really realize caused trauma.
mm,
Because of how widespread I'm seeing the shoot blight. So that's another possibility. The other thing is also remember if you're seeing a lot of shoot blight right now, and it's especially in older trees, that could be related to canker blight. And canker blight, this emerges when cankers aren't pruned out of trees, the bacteria is still active and it's moving to growing parts of the tree. So you'll see these clusters of shoot blight in the trees. And they very much are producing bacteria, which then that bacteria is very viable to cause infection in young orchards nearby. So think prevailing winds. If you have got older orchards, and I know this from experience because I've tested this hypothesis, if you've got older orchards next to younger orchards and they're in the prevailing wind direction, you can pretty much guarantee that younger orchard's going to become infected if that older orchard has active canker blight going on. So those are just a couple things to be thinking about with regards to fire blight right now. But we should be reaching terminal bud set if we aren't already there right now. So the bacteria and the disease should be slowing down and it should just stop. So, but again, if you see a lot of fire blight, hold yourself back from pruning it out because you are just going to encourage new growth and that's going to become vulnerable and you're just going to make the problem worse. I've had to stop myself and do the walk away. Like there's just too much fire blight in these trees and I'm just going to let it go. And so people just have to only prune out stuff where there's just a handful of shoot strikes caused by fire blight. So that was the last thing that I wanted to say.
fair enough. All right. Well, um, with that, I think unless anyone has anything else to add, um, we'll get this wrapped up. And thanks everybody for listening, and thanks everyone for being on here today. And we'll do another one shortly, and we'll be in apple harvest before you know it, which is crazy to think about.
Feels like the season just started yesterday.
It really does. This year has kind of just flown by.
Yes, for sure.
So, all right. Thanks a bunch, everybody. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.